that channel. The way we'll probably do this is obviously you can kind of walk through this doc here, and then everybody can have time to kind of digest it, look at it, think about it. And we could talk about it again on Friday. Maybe have some more stakeholders come in and answer questions and stuff, and see what we need to do, follow up on those questions and things. Right now, there's a lot of development work going on. Obviously, teams are like working full out right now, and so this is somewhat light on technical updates, although there's stuff in there. And the reason is mostly that the engineers, it's hard to kind of pull them away at this really important stage. So you can expect sort of a fuller, like super detailed, I don't know, technical this and that kind of deep dive, probably a little bit closer to launch. This is more of a operational update, although there are development details in here, and we're happy, everybody's happy to answer questions about those as well. But just know that if you were looking for like super technical update, probably won't have all the detail you want. So, but that's why. And feel free to ask questions and you can follow up and stuff as needed.
Hazard, would it be good for you to start off on just hitting some high-level overview of this, and then we can kind of go from feedback on there from there?
Sure. So does everybody have this link? Can everybody see this link and get into this Notion doc? Anybody who cannot say something. Yeah, the basically this report is outlining major changes that have occurred over the last quarter and putting some numbers and sharing some additional information that might be helpful to kind of understand. Putting this together wasn't difficult, but it would be better than, rather than have like quarterly reports and these big kind of things, it would be good to just have a lot of this be maintained continuously, similar to the way we do the status board. So, things that you see here that you might want to see available all the time, be sure to highlight those and let us know. Is L6 salary good? Oh, then it's L5. Yeah, that's L5. Sorry. Yeah, so there's some, it's like, it says draft at the top. Sorry, I'm responding to Priest's question about what is L6. The answer is there's no L6, it's just a mistake. Just change that. So yeah, this is not the product of a million years of hard labor. This is a draft. We're all gonna chat through it and ask questions and stuff. So I guess I'll start with basic introduction. So yeah, everybody should know KIP 12 sort of empowered key contributors to, I think the quote here is accelerate process of transformation within KeeperDAO. Why? Because we identified our strategic need to capture the market that we wanted to capture to maximize the profit for the DAO and its stakeholders. We needed to do something a little different than what we've been doing, right? Because, it was sort of just a few levels above what I would call maybe drifting, okay? It hadn't really changed or updated itself since it had been founded in terms of how work was happening. It's very process casual. There was some extremely high level work and really high performance people, but they weren't really able to kind of mesh and work in a way that was driven towards strategic goals in an effective way. And it wasn't clear how to just add, it was hard to throw more people at the problem because you can't really do that without some kind of structure. You can't just put a bunch of people in a room together and just be chaotic. And so, we had all these resources. How do we kind of leverage those resources? Well, we need to kind of filter them through an organization that will let us harness those resources and actually achieve, maximizing this, a value for the DAO and all of our infrastructure. So Jay-Z was appointed recognized to be essentially the CTO, and myself as the CEO, to kind of make spending decisions related to staffing up, making decisions, reporting those out, and restructuring and revamping and modernizing this organization so that it could scale, and then starting that process of scaling if we could. In a sense, this report is like, how did that go? How did that go? I guess I can start with the first section, scaling. So scaling in terms of people. So we increased the headcount substantially. We essentially, not essentially, we doubled, or more than doubled, the number of core contributors who are working on this protocol. And I think we can get more granular and break down like how many full-time contributors. I think we more than doubled the number of full-time contributors. We have a really great pipeline of part-time contributors as well, and some really interesting talent that got brought in the door. To do this, we kind of had to set up a standardized compensation framework and really focus hard on internal processes to make sure that we could organize everybody in a way that would allow for communication, make them effective, make them able to work to common goals. And there's key positions that we didn't have anybody able to really do in the past. I know marketing is the one that everybody always talks about. When do we have marketing? When do we have marketing? And now we have that. But then, like, really key personnel in engineering and design and research in our operations stack that are just, just really transforming what we can do and how we can do it and how long it takes to do that. So there's some justification in here of why. It's essentially that we were swamped, just very understaffed, and with no real way to change that. You can't just sort of hire people into a cauldron. It doesn't really work that way. We didn't really have hiring or onboarding practices, really. We had like the bare minimum of recruiting pipeline, but really that was it. Actually, Tommy, I think, is here, and he has done a lot of work on this, and maybe I can just even hand it over to Tommy to kind of talk through some of this and some of these deliverables. Is Tommy here? Kyle, you asked me for an overview, but I'm just going through it, man. I don't know.
I think this is working. I appreciate it.
I am here.
You want to zoom through this, or am I putting you on the spot?
You can go for it. I can fill up the plug the
Sure.
holes if you have any.
All right, sure. So Tommy's been kind of taking a lot of the lead on how we actually, like, the practicalities of how you double the size of your organization, because it's a nightmare. It's a form of nightmare. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but there's a lot of challenges that you have to anticipate when you do something like that. And certainly when you do it within 3 months, right? It's fairly aggressive. And so there was a lot of sort of things we needed to do, and Tommy's been really good about driving those and buttoning them up, and kind of running this sort of onboarding and recruiting process. So we went through this process of establishing sort of an internal philosophy on our contributorship. So that's what Priest linked in the voice chat. Essentially, a lot of that's encapsulated there. And then, standardized compensation, and sort of a contributorship policy to make sure that we're competitive with, our competitors. So to make sure that we can hire people from DeFi or from tech or from finance. And we had to find these people. Once we determined that we could take them in and start integrating them, we have a job board that required writing descriptions and stuff. So there's a lot of work around that, finding out our gaps, what we needed. We did internal assessments on that, and then stood up some recruiting partnerships to get some of these positions that are kind of hard to find. So working with Bankless DAO that was has really paid off. I think that's an idea that Matt suggested actually, and that was a really good move, and it was good to kind of work within the DAO space, I guess, as well. And we also kind of work with Objective Paradigm, which is a placement firm specifically for big tech and fintech, and that's led to a lot of really good leads and a couple of candidates as well. We try to kind of, because recruiting firms and things, there's recruiting fees. We try to kind of set a really high bar for this placements from these sorts of things, because it's not that it's not worth it, but it's sort of, it can become expensive if you rely on it exclusively. So we, if they brought in us a lead that was like, platinum, gold, A+++, yeah, okay. But if it was like somebody kind of middle of the road, then it's probably not worth it, right? So we sort of we do have a strategy for, how we think about these things that have recruiting fees. It's important. And then, of course, we continue to engage with prospects coming in from our own community and added some people from that. And sometimes they're lurking, or sometimes they're just around but not visible, but they're out there. And then also from within the team, or people who have been working with the team, people who have been working part-time or on contracts and things, who maybe wanted to step up and kind of had some skills. Yeah, it's I mean, we have some wonderful people who we've interviewed throughout the quarter. Just pretty much, we didn't continuously interview, but I mean, there was a steady stream of folks. And interviewing is really time intensive on people, and it was sort of hard to it can be challenging to kind of pivot to doing this sort of interviewing work and vetting and screening and certainly onboarding. And that's again where Tommy's leadership here really helped us, because kind of taking a lot of that administrative stuff off of the table, and really making it so that key people who needed to run these interviews and things could sort of just kind of assess and start working quite as soon as possible with as little friction. And it's been really great. It was super messy though. It was super messy. I think there's probably some people here right now who have witnessed the messiness. There's always some of that in young organizations more so, but really in any organization. But we definitely had some learning happening. It's not quite blitz scaling, but it is aggressive to double your headcount in 3 months. And there's going to be some, there's always going to be some kind of missteps along the way for something like that. And then I know people have been asking about this, so we tried to put together kind of just a sort of a quick table to kind of give a general overview of breakdown of, who's on the team, who's doing what. The status thing, if it says FTC, that means they're a full-time contributor, and PTC means a part-time contributor, and EXC means an expert contributor. And those have different compensation amounts and styles. And if they're advisors or partners, then they're not compensated on any kind of salary basis. And grants, people who are on grants have grants. This will become relevant later. There's a section on Treasury you'll see about contributor compensation. The levels, you can look at the contributor incentives document, and then I just put some checkboxes so that people could see like who's sort of new this quarter. And this again, for this whole report, this ends as of the end of March. So whether there's new contributors in the pipeline or in the wings, I can tell you that there are. They're not reflected here. They haven't been. We'd like to onboard them, but we can't actually, announce that, or because we can't really begin to compensate them or give them any grants or things until we have any kind of extension or the separate governance vote and stuff. So this isn't even all of them, but yeah, this is a lot of them. And what I'd like to do ultimately is maybe have some more understanding of like what each of these people do, like what are they kind of responsible for? What have they been working on? Um, I think there's an opportunity to do something cool like that where it's just simply like, I don't know, every month or every other month, what have you been working on? And then that makes its way out into this, so people can kind of see like, oh, Execute's been doing this, or you know, Style's been doing this, or Watts has been doing this. So that'd be cool. Onboarding is really annoying. Tommy has been really great about building an onboarding process. People like this onboarding process, which is great because it's like your first impression. And it can be so tedious to get right, but it's so useful for making new contributors, new people coming in feel welcome to get started working like as soon as possible. So super credit to Tommy for setting that up, and continuing to kind of maintain that. There's stuff about reorganizing the workplace. So we want to move to a model that has teams with sort of a person, a lead or a director in charge of the team, so that the DAO knows who's responsible, and then they're able to communicate back and forth, but operate with some high degree of autonomy. There was a lot of work that we needed to do first to get to that level. We needed to kind of grow in order to then organize. We didn't want to organize and then grow and then realize that we'd kind of drawn the borders in the wrong way. So at the end of the quarter, we have some teams that are pretty well defined and other teams that are sort of less defined, but sort of in progress. I think early on in the next quarter, if we do this again, those teams are going to be more codified. They're going to be, ratified with the DAO, and there's going to be budgets attached and all of that. It was just sort of like a grow first strategy, I guess, if you want to think about it like that. And so, but it is something where we laid the groundwork all the way up to really drawing those borders, and that's kind of where we left it off, right? And one nice thing about this is that, at the beginning of the quarter, the team was less than kind of this first, this Dunbar number or whatever of deep trust, right? Where you have, you can kind of get along without any real formal rituals or organization. And now that we've doubled, it's not that way anymore. And we really feel it. You feel that you've now got too many people to really have a full handle on what's going on without some kind of touch points. And that's great because the things that we have to do internally to communicate are things that are easy to turn out and communicate, improve our communication publicly, right? So if we have meeting notes that we have to share because somebody wasn't able to be in that meeting, but it's important for them to know, well, that same artifact is easy to share publicly. So things that are useful to the DAO at large are now things that are also useful to the team, and thus probably going to be more likely to get prioritized and built out. So we're not kind of duplicating work or like having to do a separate thing. That should make communication easier. That's another huge focus for the next quarter, as well as like making sure that people know who's responsible, what are they doing, and so that the DAO can kind of really conduct kind of oversight that we want for it to be able to do. So you can see some priorities next quarter, forming these teams, getting this communication piece right, and then having sort of like an organizational handbook or like an operating manual, all of the aspects of how the DAO is operated or the KeeperDAO Labs is operated, how the things that you can just throw this book at somebody new who's onboarding, they can kind of get up to speed pretty quickly. Because one consequence of bringing in people for these roles is that not all of them are super DeFi fluent. And that's great because we're growing the pool of candidates here, but it's also, there's more onboarding that needs to happen for them, I guess. Gosh, that took forever. Nobody asked any questions, so let's try something else. Let's try something different. Somebody else say something.
Yeah, I think we'll just open up to the community to speak your thoughts on anything that Hazard just said or general thoughts about anything. to discuss CVX. We can discuss really any topic. I know there are a lot of questions around that specifically, so the floor is wide open. We have our devs here, we have our CEO, we have everyone that we need resource-wise to give some transparency to the community.
Well,
So
if we're going to talk CVX, we might have a productive conversation looking at the Treasury section, which I'm sure is going to be of interest to people here. I mean, I'm going to skip through some of these. I'm not going to skip, but I'm going to kind of most of this people are aware. So I'm just going to go through this second section quickly. So we grew our network quite substantially. We set a cadence of trying to do something new every week, and we didn't exactly hit that, but it was pretty good on average. Probably it would be like that. You know, the number I've been throwing around is increased about 700%. So we really added. We went from sort of, you know, Bancor and Ninja to a pretty rich sort of set of verticals and opportunities, which is really important because we wanted to increase the number of success scenarios for coordination game, more volume, more value to stakeholders, value to stakers, token holders, etc. More ways to win. So there was a lot involved in all of this, and I'm really not doing it justice, but it's a good thing. Everybody should understand that, like, this sort of stream of integrations and potential integrations that did not exist in January, right? It didn't exist at the beginning of the quarter. We were going to launch a trading product, right? Coordination game was for people to trade. That's not the case now. I mean, it is the case, but that's like one of, what, 7 or something other cases, right? So we've really transformed what we're doing and what the public and our, you know, colleagues and integrators and partners see us as doing. We're putting this coordination game or coordination protocol at the center of this whole ecosystem and showing that it can touch and you know, drive value to all of these different product categories and sectors. And that's not what anybody, I think, in January was expecting, including many of these partners. And it's been very, it's not, I wouldn't say it's easy, but I would say that these are on the easier end of sales. Like, it is a very compelling case we could make. I'm very optimistic that this adoption rate is possible. So this to me, this is the biggest, in a way, change in posture from the beginning of the quarter. In the beginning of the quarter, we were doing something, and we said we'd like to do something else, and here this is really backing up and putting credibility under and behind that. I think we really are able to do that. So this has been really vital and very interesting to discover. I put a section here on simplifying products. There's a saying that the best code is the code that you don't write, and that's not true. The best code is code that you throw away because it's no longer sucking resources and time and everything. And we did a little bit of spring cleaning, right, or winter cleaning with the product line. I'm sure everybody noticed, and these were all KIPs, hiding vaults, as well as most recently the liquidity pools. This is part of sort of a revamp of our entire tech stack. But you know, these were things that really fit better. Hiding vaults in particular fit better into a different strategy, as everybody knows. But this is, I'm just surfacing this because it's sort of its key. A lot of resources were being, and a lot of bandwidth was being dedicated to products that weren't really strategically aligned with our actual goals. And not only were they taking people bandwidth, they were also, in both cases, taking emissions, right? So inflation. And so sunsetting both of these is a really big step, and it's an important part of focusing any kind of enterprise, to take a look at what you're doing and, you know, sort of kill the things that aren't working in order to redouble your efforts on the things that are working. And in our case, you know, we were able to double the headcount at the same time, so we you know, kind of got twice the focus we otherwise would. Pangolin, are you still here? Yeah.
Yep.
Penguin, do you want to take this section 4 real quick because you're definitely the most plugged into this and have the most to say.
Yeah, can do. I see Joey's in a meeting right now in the work Discord. So I'm not going to take credit for all stuff he's been doing. Let me just pull it up. I don't have it up right now. Yeah, so I think and we were talking about this just like an hour ago, but a lot of the stuff that's been going on this quarter has been a focus on scaling, and Hazard just talked a lot about scaling people and all the tricky things around like onboarding, recruiting, all of that. With engineers, we also have systems that we're working with, and scale is kind of relevant in several ways to that. So we have to ready everything to work with a lot of volume, if that's our goal. And we also need to make things ready for these new people to be productive on. So back in December, well, back when I joined in July, there was like really not a lot of devs. There was like more products and devs, and a lot of the code was just it worked, but it was like not easy to onboard onto. And when you're kind of maintaining everything that's running and developing new stuff, sometimes other things slip. And around kind of November, we were realizing that some of the code bases were like not particularly they were getting really hard to add new things to. And I'm sure a lot of people realized that like the trade app was having less and less features added to it. So we've been doing a lot of work to make these code bases much, much better for people to join. Onto massively improved. Like as Hazard said, there was just nothing existing before, and now it's pretty smooth. So I'm really excited about that because I think like a lot of the time people extrapolate past progress into the future. The community, for good reason, like they've seen this kind of CG launch drift over months, and it just seems like never ending, and like progress is so slow, and it will always be this way. From the inside, like working with the team every day, I don't really see it like that at all. I think there's been some huge bottlenecks which have been cleared, and then we've also scaled the systems and the people a lot, and that means like when all of this stuff launches, like we just build off this infrastructure and with this massively increased headcount, so the progress is exponential. So I would encourage you to look at the signs of like all of these people joining on happily as a very, very good thing. And anyone who's kind of worked in tech will probably may understand that more than people who don't. Yeah, and then the other thing, like obviously, like we have a lot of stuff. Like our infrastructure compared to most DeFi protocols, it's much, much more complicated. We run our own KeeperBot in-house. We have several servers just for tying things together, like for the data, the coordinator is a server. As Hazard said, we had a bunch of other stuff supporting vaults and pools, which we don't have to do. And then we have all of the front end stuff, the web app. The kind of final stages of getting this all refreshed and up is making sure it works together, end to end, all at once. And there are no critical things. Like we're handling a lot of money here, so we want to be very, very sure that like nothing critical is going to go wrong. So like I thank everyone for their patience, I guess, in that. Like, I know it can be frustrating that things seem to be taking a while, but it is important things are done right. The good thing about engineering is when they are done right, you just kind of set it and forget it. And then you can build new stuff, and the stuff that you built before, it just works. If you don't do it right, then you don't have that luxury. You have to continuously go back and sort out the stuff that like you're maintaining. So I think that's like the main technical story that engineers this quarter. Next quarter it will be a lot more like there's just so much stuff coming up. I'm really excited. Like just seeing the tech syncs like every week and seeing what everyone's working on. I think like the exciting stuff is to come after launch. So that's all I want to say on that. Really, I don't really want to go into the specifics of all the like technical details, but if people are interested, we can go through some of that stuff at another time.
Questions, things for Pangolin, things about development you want to ask. This isn't your last and only chance, but you know. Okay, we can talk about finances. Everybody's interested in finances. That's why we're here, right? That's the next section here. Matt, do you want to? Is Matt here? Yes, Matt. Do you want to walk people through this?
Sure thing. Hey, everybody. Yeah, so definitely a fair amount of information here. I guess I'll preface this by saying, I plan on having a larger quarterly report. These are kind of like the highlights, from that. If anybody knows anything about just, financial reporting in general, it's pretty hard to do a turnaround for a full quarterly report in 6 days or so. So these are things that I was able to put together fairly quickly. Through some base analysis, and it's definitely not perfect. There may be some errors. I just want to caveat that. I think everything's pretty accurate for the most part, though. But there will be a larger report coming from this. So despite the environment being relatively bad, and I'm talking about just the crypto market in general, the larger, at least U.S. equities market, being pretty rough, kind of a risk-off situation more than anything. We've definitely seen an impact from that, but overall, because we were in a situation where we're mostly in stable coins and ETH and Bitcoin, we've been relatively insulated. We're not loaded up on shit coins by any means, which have seen their value dive much greater. So you can kind of see that schedule at the top, just kind of breaking down our assets at a more granular level. Looks like something's happened with the next image, but basically, at least that's what on my end. But basically, the next kind of image just shows just a summary of what all those different assets look like when you kind of bucket them together between stables, ETH and just Rook and just other like assets that we have, and that pie chart kind of shows that. So really, as you can see, pretty well diversified, with ETH being our heaviest asset, stablecoins being our second, followed by Rook. And let's see what we have next. Next section, really just kind of outlines where most of our investments are. Most of our capital is relatively idle, as you can see by what's in the LPs, which is about 54% of our value. Yeah, that number seems right. That's mainly there. I know we've had a lot of conversations. I know there's been a KIP that's successfully passed about kind of drawing those funds from those positions. And I think we have the ability to do that. I know some initial numbers that were kind of thrown around were about $5 million per asset that we probably need to keep in there for flash loan purposes. But I've actually been doing some analysis with somebody who I don't believe has been announced, but he's a real Chad from a data analytics perspective. And we actually reviewed yesterday some of his initial findings and had some good conversations around that. And based on some preliminary analysis, we're going to be able to take out a lot more from those positions than we expect. So I've already started drafting up a proposal kind of with those findings and some conclusions from that. And so being able to kind of draw that is going to allow us to deploy our capital in a lot of different meaningful ways. But more to come on that. I have, and I think I've mentioned this a couple times, but budget process is a key part of what I'm trying to build from a foundation perspective, and then I have this treasury management framework that's I'm kind of waiting on that. But a lot of that, of a lot of our thesis and how we're going to manage our capital moving forward will be more clear once those have been released to the wild, and should make a lot more sense and really allow the community to understand what our direction is. But probably more importantly, like it gives SoFunds something like basically a benchmark to measure their judgments against. So instead of them just kind of subjectively saying hey, this seems like it's a good investment, maybe they're not even like a finance person per se, that this just allows them to say, okay, does this fall within the parameters that we as a DAO have approved? So that's a big part of what I hope to kind of implement. But probably will start making some moves before that point, potentially. But going back to where we currently stand, you can see about 3.9% is in Maple Finance currently. That's our USDC balance that we have deposited with them. You can see about 5% is in B Protocol within that BAM. And that was I think that's only been there about 20 days. So really kind of minimal action from that perspective. And then roughly 10 to 11% is in Convex. Well, it's not locked currently, but we all have lots to say about that. And then you can kind of see where the rest of the position is currently kind of standing idle. Looking down, kind of going into our investments a little bit more, which I've already kind of hit on, you can kind of just see a schedule of our buybacks to date, and then kind of the ROI based on that. And as you can see, it's dependent on the price of Rook, because that's obviously what we've been acquiring. But we're very much in the green from those positions. I don't know what today's price is for Rook, so that may change it a little bit. But it definitely seems like it's been a good move. It's not necessarily, at least from my perspective, again, I'm going to emphasize this is my opinion, and my intent for writing that KIP was to really kind of give us an asset that we can kind of support, incentivizing these contributors that we, as was previously mentioned, really trying to scale the team in a meaningful way to kind of give us the tools we need to really build something great long term. And so that basically gave us, almost another year of runway just from a Rook perspective, which is really, really nice. Moving on down, you can kind of just see the Maple Finance. I won't really get into that. CVX, here's kind of the listing of all of the revenues by round, what we've done with those assets, and the average Rook price that we acquired. I think our average price for Rook is 122. I think I mentioned that somewhere. So we're kind of at break even from that perspective as well, just from just the quantity of Rook that we bought that time. LSD, that's basically the BAM, that's the B Protocol investment. Obviously there's more to that than just like trying to get the rewards off of that. Like that's very much an integration that we hope to capture flow from, and that should be a good win, hopefully long term as well. Kind of moving down into a completely different, and anybody stop me if they want to talk through anything. I'm happy to answer any questions. But outside of that, moving on down, really kind of switching gears to more contributor facing. As mentioned before, we really scaled up the team, bigly, as some would say. And so you can kind of see here's the breakdown of the full-time contributors and the different levels for each of those. And you can kind of look down further. You can basically see that the way we have it broken out between operations, devs, and I guess leadership, which is Jay-Z and Hazard, it's pretty balanced, which is I think something that we should have, because we obviously need a lot of development for a lot of different things we hope to do in the future, but we also need to make sure that we're supporting our community, the DAO, and kind of those devs and leadership all at the same time. So I imagine over time that operations number will become a smaller percent, just because in some sense that's overhead in the long term, but it's needed. But as we grow, that I imagine that'll be a much smaller percent. Diving deeper, you can kind of see, again, this is stated salary. So if you know anything about accounting, this is not like GAAP accrual basis. This is just us looking at if we were to take somebody's annual salaries, understand what the USD commitments per month and Rook commitments per month is. That really kind of shows it by the different functions or departments, whatever you want to call them. And then the next pie chart really just kind of shows that similar to that top where I was just looking at headcount. This is looking at the compensation by function. So you can see that devs are definitely higher. If you look at our compensation guides, they're definitely higher paid than the operations, as they should, just because of the competitiveness to get them, and the need to make sure that we have the right people in the right seats on that perspective. Kind of scrolling down again, this next one is kind of salary by level, kind of mirroring what I talked about in the beginning of this section, where it shows everybody's names associated with the levels. This is looking at the salaries and the commitments of USD and Rook by month. And then the pie chart kind of does the same thing. Moving on down, this is kind of a chart, kind of histogram that just basically shows our scaling efforts from a headcount perspective and how that relates to our comp both in USD and Rook terms. USD, you can see that it very much mirrors it almost to a T, which is what you would expect. And if you look at the Rook comp and headcount growth, and it only reveals so much. And really a lot of that is just because we've scaled so many people, especially starting in February, that because there's a 3-month ramp up on when somebody starts getting their Rook allocation, that we haven't seen a lot of those vesting, that Rook hasn't really vested yet. So starting in May, we have a couple people starting, as well as June and July, we'll have a lot more Rook outflows associated with those because they'll be vesting as well. But those previous charts that show the Rook by month outflows, that should be fully encompassing our headcount as of today. And let's see. Anybody? I'll pause there. I know I've talked a lot. Anybody have any questions about anything I've discussed before I get into kind of labs budget? Okay. Sounds good. Finishing off the finance section, really kind of simple. I will say I'll highlight right here at the bottom of this section, you can see the full detail, basically a ledger of our wallet in that link if you just click the here. So you can kind of see the full detail, and that should be transparent on a prospective basis. So anybody can kind of check that out, and we're kind of opening up the doors to that. But KIP definitely allowed us to scale very quickly, it allowed us to kind of give the funding to scale and kind of support the labs team. And so you can really see this Rook usage by labs function is showing how much Rook went out the door over the first quarter. I want to highlight and kind of emphasize that KIP 15 only related to activities through March through June. So basically January and February, those numbers really aren't impacting that budget. But you can kind of see through that next budget utilization chart where we have what we've been allocated for through KIP 15, what we've utilized from both a Rook and USDC perspective, and just showing what the remaining balance was before we were allocated additional funds, which should reconcile back to what the funds were as of March 31st. Which, as you can see, we've really used quite little, I'd say, from a Rook perspective. We haven't used any really USDC perspective. If you were to click on that Labs wallet, though, you'll see that in the first couple days of April, we've had a lot of recruiting expenses that we've kind of paid out, as well as just some other expenses. So, that USDC number is going to be impacted, I guess, in the second quarter. But overall, we've been pretty prudent with what we've spent. Based on what I'm projecting and kind of talking to people in real time, I don't see any need for why we'll have any deficits from what we've kind of requested. So I guess, I see the future as being pretty bright from a treasury perspective. I'm hoping to definitely start deploying that capital more. I'm going to try to get the community involved as much as possible. And I think just understanding our LP positions and how much we can draw from that is really critical to knowing what we can kind of do moving forward. The last thing I'll say, just from my perspective as somebody who's been kind of the scenes, one thing I have been doing that is not necessarily seen from a community standpoint is just building a lot of financial tools that the teams can use to really monitor, like, what are upcoming payments? How can we budget for them? How can we create level of accountability internally that can then be transferred externally to really make us more acting as like, a company, and maybe that has some negative connotations, but really acting more professional from how we are stewards over our finances and our budget versus just kind of haphazardly just kind of spending cash and looking and kind of dealing with fires as they come about. So that's one thing I just want to highlight, that it's been a core part of what I'm doing that isn't necessarily external facing. But maybe I'll pause there, and I think that's kind of the end of the finance section. So happy to answer any questions.
I think Priest had a couple of points in the chat, maybe about setting a reference price. I'm not sure if you saw those, Matt.
Okay. Chris, maybe you just want to hop in and talk about it real fast, just because it's gonna be quicker. We're here.
Yeah, give me 1 sec. All right. Yeah, so the main thing is I believe the salary summary is off by about 1 million when I calculated with the current Rook price. I think that might just be because of the volatility of the Rook price component. So I would always add a reference price whenever you're referencing an asset that is not USD stablecoin, just so that we can do the math afterwards more easily ourselves, or like see if it's off from the stated figures if we know that the asset has moved significantly. And yeah, that's basically it. Just add reference prices whenever it's necessary.
Yeah, maybe this is a good time to kind of talk about how our compensation structure works, and I think that's to some degree embedded in that incentivization guide. And Tommy thought me if you'd rather talk about this, but really how it works from our perspective is when we come on board, we get offered a certain level, which it has a certain stated salary. So that stated annual salary is what you see here. I
understand. Actually, I'll put another anyway.
Yeah. So
if the stated salary differs from the actual current salary because of Rook price component price action, I would still like to have an actual salary chart where we just see the actual salary at the current Rook price. Where you put a reference price and you put the actual salary, so that just that you can do the math quickly of run rate and whatever at the current price.
So I guess
even if it's segregated by Rook and USDC, and the stated salary at the beginning, it's I'm not sure how to exactly phrase it. I don't know.
So from
it's just put an actual salary at the end of the quarter, March 31st. Take the Rook price, multiply that by the Rook per month, and then just aggregate that with the USDC salary to get an actual salary.
So I guess what I would say is that from a runway perspective, that really kind of doesn't matter because
I think it's for ease of use. I think most people don't really want to go look at Rook price at different times to see if it's outdated or not. I think it's just easier to use if we have a rough summary of what it should be. I actually think if you have to choose between a stated salary and an actual salary, I think the actual salary would be more it would be more important to see than the stated salary, because it does if a contributor joined 2 years ago when Rook was at $10, I don't really care. I care about what our current expense is at the current moment, at the current price. So doesn't really matter to me what their if their salary when they started was at 600,000, if it's currently at 3 million per year.
Definitely something I can try to incorporate. I will say that this is kind of part of working at a high risk venture and kind of, and to some degree a startup. There's going to be situations, especially if we do perform the way we want to, where, there's going to be people that have taken the risk to kind of have...
I'm not saying anything against it. Just you have to, I think personally, I would like that reported in a way that's easier to just glance at and actually understand it. It's I'm not talking anything about the compensation or the way it's structured, just reporting it.
Priest, can I sorry to butt in, Matt. I apologize.
Go for it.
The amount of Rook doesn't change with the price.
Oh, the price, yeah, I know, but the price, for example, currently, if you look at the DBank link, or I'm not even sure what we linked here. The Treasury link is outdated, has been outdated for half a year. But if you look at the current Treasury on any wallet aggregator, you will see the amount in USD. Most people won't look at the Rook components individually, and most people won't look at this in the salary also, just look at the components individually. I think most people just look at the overarching USD component and look at the overarching annual salary aggregate, and then divide it to get a rough runway. So I think we should make it as easy as possible for people that don't want to do the extra work. Just have like a rough glance and rough interpretation of how long our runway is, how our finances look, and etc. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, that almost seems like we would need to factor in, say, when people claimed Rook out of a Sablier stream, that
No, no.
they've now been technically.
Yeah, I'm not getting my point across. So like
I think
currently, if you look at the salary summary,
Go ahead.
if you look at the salary summary, the USD per month is 226,185. The Rook per month is 3,229. At the current Rook price of 119.55, if you multiply that and add the USDC salary, we come out to about 7.2 million. So the annual stated salary is off by about $1 million. Like that's my gripe, because we don't actually like factor in the Rook price. Like if there's a differentiation between like salary when they started and actual salary currently at the current Rook price, I don't think we should like go back to the stated salary when they first started. I think we should look at the actual salary that are currently being paid.
I can definitely perform a reconciliation. I think it's unavoidable to have the annual salary, but I think to your point, we could have a reconciliation between what you're calculating and what that is saying.
But I don't think, okay, I don't think he's actually asking, I don't think he's saying this number is wrong. I don't think this 6,199,000 number is wrong. And like you could do the division, like you could subtract out the annualized USDC and then divide with the remainder by the number, units of Rook, and figure out what the price of Rook was when you came up with that number, that 6 million number. But you're kind of working backwards at then, and you're kind of accepting this number that you're trying to verify to find the price. And you should be going the other way. You should know what the price is, the reference price that was used to compute this annual salary, which is in dollars, based on the price in USD of Rook at the time that this table, this snapshot was taken. If you have that one number, the price of Rook in USD, then it's easy to understand if this 6 million number is correct, and if and to extend that and do a runway analysis. It's just to ask for, like, when you take this screenshot, what is the? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think actually what Matty did, he just took the like total compensation where we see KeeperDAO when you go on the KeeperDAO incentives dashboard. I think he just took that compensation, that like blank USD value, and multiplied by whatever how many contributors we have. So I don't think he even used like a Rook reference price whenever he did the calculation. He's just taking the blank like USD number that's stated in our compensation contributor incentives dashboard. So I think that like that by itself should not be the way we state salaries, or like at least in our financial reporting, isn't how we should represent it.
Yeah, I would agree. There should be a reference price. It should be the price that is the price at the time of this table, whatever is being created. And then, yeah, that's what it should be.
So another thing I was going to say, and I think Thies was about to get to this, but if you were to look at things, we pay in bulk for a quarter into a Sablier contract. And so if you were to look at the expense at that time, that's going to be a different amount than versus if you were to try to just, because then there's claimable process, like if when people are claiming when they started. So I mean, it's only going to reveal so much. Let's put it that way. But point taken, I will definitely do my best to try to come up with something that you feel is more meaningful. And if you'd like to work with me on exactly what you are looking for, then I'm happy to kind of do that, just to make sure that we're absolutely clear with trying to get you the most transparent possible report we can.
For sure. I don't think it's, yeah, I'm not really sure if I expressed that right, but it shouldn't be that difficult to explain. I'll send you a quick message afterwards.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah, the only other stuff left in this doc is governance summary. Most of us were here, saw these KIPs pass or go through. It's there for completion. And then priorities for the next quarter and stuff. Ape season, is that a silent signal to a question or wanting to talk about these? Or
No, I'm just here to shitpost.
That's okay. So as I said at the beginning, and this is important to understand, because otherwise it's sort of the missing thing from this report is where the hell is coordination game? It's here. But like I said, talking about it is something that is being, a lot of work is being put into it, and this probably isn't the right venue to let the air out of that balloon right this minute. So yeah, it's conspicuously absent likely here. And so Ape Season, that is the not just priority for Q2, it is the priority. And that's in a way one of the reasons why it's not more infused through this. This is sort of all of the things other than the obvious number one priority, which is managing the launch of the coordination game and all the associated things. So you can look at the status hub and draw your own conclusions. Yeah. So here, I think the focus here that you're asking is really managing the launch, and the subsequent strategic roadmap is sort of navigating a post-launch environment in the best way. If you like, I'll put it at the top. There. Okay.
I have one more comment. I guess it's kind of on the lines of the more agile treasury management framework. I've said this a couple times, but if anybody has interest in sourcing ideas that we can deploy our treasury in, I think we always want to do it in a mission aligned way, at least from my perspective. Again, that's my perspective on things. But if you are interested in doing that, please reach out to me. I know, again, I'm going to call him out again, but Starfire has done that. He's come up with some great ideas, not only from a business development perspective, but where we can kind of, deploy our capital potentially. So if anybody else has ideas like that, that's kind of the beauty of a community is, sourcing ideas that we may not always see, and then we can kind of collaborate on analyzing what those set of options are in the best possible way. And hopefully we'll have a more meaningful framework to do that. So please reach out. I'm happy to kind of collaborate with anybody that's interested.
Well, we've been going for a solid hour here today, and appreciate the large audience that we got to come talk through this, get some questions answered. Does anyone else have any kind of thoughts before we wrap up today, and continue iterating on this and churning forward?
I have a quick question. It's probably a very generic question, but just wanted to know, since we are close to the coordination game, what's the reason we're hiring so many engineers at this point or at this juncture if majority of the work is pretty much done? Sorry if it was answered earlier, probably missed it, but I just wanted to know.
Hazard, you want to go ahead?
I could, but I'm tired of talking.
I can answer that because it kind of ties into what I was saying. So I definitely don't want people to think of the launch as us being done. I would say launching the CG is finishing our base infrastructure. There is going to be a lot of engineering built on top of this. So we can see that the integrations have increased a lot this quarter, and we expect that to continue. We have some very good growth team contributors. We talk to protocols all the time. A lot of those integrations require a dedicated engineer, at least for a little bit. Some are more trivial, but a lot of them just require some love and attention from an engineer. So it's very critical for us that we have a large core of engineers who understand our stack, so that we can move fast on these integrations. One of the things that was happening, we've had leads for the last year we talked to people for the last year, but a lot of these opportunities we actually just couldn't deploy engineering talent to go after. And we like the kind of like goal for the engineering team is that we will be a lot more agile to do that. Because you never know, like a lead could come tomorrow, which would be a huge opportunity, but it needs like 2 or 3 people across the stack to look at it. So that's like the kind of the perfect vision of the team. We do also need to just maintain the stuff that's running, and that takes people. And then the other thing is that we are already, not everyone who's working now is working on the coordination game launch. That's not really possible. That would be like a too many cooks spoil the broth situation. So a lot of the newer hires are working on some stuff that's coming next. So we've talked about a lot needing to do a protocol upgrade, or we don't need to do it, but we're planning to do a protocol upgrade. From a user facing perspective, you should care about that because we will be able to offer like true market swaps. But there's actually a lot of stuff that this will greatly improve. So we have a few people working on that, and we're prepping some people to take over some integrations as well. But like, yeah, after the whole launch thing, you're probably going to hear a lot more about the protocol upgrade.
I think it would be cool to see like a diagram of ideas of different things that can be built on top of the coordination game, just to kind of see what is possible with the tech you guys have built.
Yeah, I think that's
yeah, that would be cool. I think that'll probably be part of our marketing and stuff. As well as something that we develop internally to understand what to go after. There are some aspects of this that we're still trying to. So one reason that I set a priority next quarter is communication and transparency is something we need to understand as well as how much should we show our hand, I guess. And that's something that we only really care about, or I only really care about insofar as it would harm the competitiveness and the value return for the DAO through the success of this. So that's not to say that we can't do that. I do want to do that, and we probably can, but just know that like there's one other, I guess, ingredient in this broth or this decision about that, and that is like us making sure, and this is happening now, us really evaluating hard and trying to make really sure that we don't harm the competitiveness or give away things that would be of use to potential rivals by doing that. And that's not the same thing as saying, well, it's not acceptable to say, well, as a blanket statement that less is better. Like that's not what I'm saying. It's not the same thing as the CG, like don't want to talk about stuff until we have stuff. It's none of those. It's really like at a strategic level, like how much should we say or not? And I think this probably falls on the like people should know, people need to know anyway. But then if you get down to the nitty-gritty parts of it, there's maybe a level where you want to kind of play it close to the chest. But that's a complicated question. That's a really complicated question. But I want us to get to an answer to it because it's honestly exhausting to not be able to share more. I think it's exhausting for everybody. So there's pressure on both sides to have that happen. And the only the main concern is like, I don't want us to like harm our competitive advantage in any way by that. But to the extent that we can avoid that or identify things that don't do that or create situations where that's not a problem, or not going to be a problem for us, then yeah, we should. And it might be worth the trade-off anyway. Like maybe it costs us a little bit of advantage, but we make up for it by the value that that information brings by being spread throughout the community and the DAO. And that's totally, I think that could be completely true and possible. So we just have to look at that, examine that, and then make some decisions.
Quick question on that. Is CG code licensed?
What code?
The code that will run the underlying coordination game. Whatever is used to order keepers or fill orders, whatever.
Well, the code that is, so to me, it matters,
not
it
even
matters
live.
most. So like the smart contracts?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe that it is licensed. I don't think there's a license attached to any of it. To some extent, the code that's in the smart contracts is not something that we would want or need to protect through a license.
So the most important code wouldn't even be live on chain. You would just run it back.
Yeah.
I don't want to say important, but yeah, like what you would like. Yeah. That's
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's all like private repositories. That like our kind of technical moat, the thing which makes us distinct, is mostly Python code infrastructure, which isn't like some of our stuff is public on GitHub, but that stuff isn't.
Gotcha. I think in that case, I don't quite understand the defensiveness regarding the coordination game. Like if the code itself is private and we don't like, we took KeeperDAO like a year to build the current variation of the coordination game. Like, is talking about our mechanisms really gonna be like that big of a threat?
I mean,
so there's a couple of things. We just described to you the state that this organization was in prior to January. So if an organization that was better staffed and, highly motivated and could look at and examine and reverse engineer some of the things we're doing, like absolutely it would be a problem. But that's not a moat. You can't just kind of not talk about things. You can, I guess, but that's not the industry that we're really in. And so there's other ways to build competitive advantage that's durable. And some of those are outlined in that new Citadel document, right? And those are what we're really grasping for here. Like in a general sense, nothing, there's no, technology is not going to be the moat. It can be, but it's a constantly moving target, right? You have to be constantly moving ahead with new technology. And so the moat is really your ability to continuously execute and pull ahead and stay ahead, and then secure some kind of economy of scale
For sure,
and
but doesn't
equity and stuff. That's it.
Yeah, sorry, just doesn't that like further my point? If the moat is not necessarily just in a tech stack, then why don't we communicate more?
Because we don't have those other moats today, right? And so part of what I said is evaluating is to say like, okay, do we have brand equity? Well, no, our brand equity is shit. Do we have economy of scale? Well, we've increased our network size 700%. We've got a lot more partners now than we did, but it's pretty much just enough for somebody to take a look, figure out, and then go run ahead if they have a better staffed growth group and whatever, and maybe try to do something. So we do, but it's not enough. It's not there yet. And we have a technical advantage. We believe we're further along, and it would be difficult for somebody to really replicate this at this stage. But that's a moving target. And that's good, but maybe it's not enough. But somewhere in there, like I said, there's a balance where we need to be able to say more, talk more, and do things in this better way. But there may be some key things that we might want to hold off on, like one or two, I don't know, some critical things that are really like seeing around the corner kind of things that we don't really want to talk about until we get to a certain point. I hope the day comes we have runaway advantage and we can just talk about anything and everything, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. I just want to be careful to know when we pass that, because if we're not there and we're chatting away and then somebody eats our lunch, we're all going to look really stupid and we're going to get really poor. So
Yeah, point taken. Though again, like I think it's a horse that has been beat to death at this point. But like, a preface is like, hopefully a coordination game is within like Q2, within the next 3 months, hopefully. And at this point, like our Twitter just looks sad. Like we get absolutely zero engagement from people that are outside of this current Discord. We get like almost no newcomers. There's zero like brand recognition when you talk about MEV in crypto in general. I think like before the coordination game, I would still like to see that. Obviously, there's stuff that you have to protect, but like just like try to create general engagement and get people excited for a launch. Because yeah, the current point is just, yes, we have to protect our moat, and at the moment it might just be purely technical, but I still think there's stuff that you can just generally do to increase engagement.
yeah, there definitely is. We have a really exciting core of a marketing department now, or marketing group, that I am very pleased with. And hopefully their work is going to start driving that. Very professional. And I can definitely see what you're saying. Yeah, like just to be very clear, like we don't want to, we haven't necessarily had the personnel to do that, but also we also haven't wanted to sort of say things until we have something to say and make sure that we say that well. And so it's not the case that we don't talk or that the Twitter isn't being engaged with, because that's the way we want it, because we want to be secret-y and keep our secrets. It's really more, it's not deliberate. It's more that we don't have dedicated staffing for that right now, and we don't have dedicated like fully understood all of the aspects that you'd need, like who are you engaging with? What do you want from them? Do you want them to convert? Do you want them to become users? Do you want them to join the DAO? Where do you want them to go? It's very informational. And right now, you're right. There's not that many people that are paying attention, and the brand equity is in the tank. And that is the task of this new group of people to help to turn around. I'm confident that they're going to do a really great job, and that is going to start happening probably sooner than people here expect. You will be talking about it and seeing results of that, I think.
Just like, I'll just add my quick last point. Like I don't think I know, yeah, the team here has a very like professional, going at it from a very professional and like analytical angle. But like if you just look back and when the Twitter has actually performed, when Lapras was in charge of it for like a week, we've had engagement that was about an order of magnitude higher than it is now. Like I don't think it's that much of a science. You don't have to have a completely well-versed plan for everything. I think just doing something sometimes is better than doing nothing. So while I can appreciate that we're like trying to lay out a very analytical plan for how we want to proceed and actually manage our brand equity, I think like having half a year of complete inaction, obviously it's not reversible at this point, so I don't know, it doesn't really matter that much anymore. But yeah, I don't think we have to go at everything from a purely like Web 2 standpoint.
I agree with that, but like, here's a question for you. Like, do you really think with the web assets we have up right now that like we actually do want that much attention? Because like if people kind of, that they see a tweet goes viral or whatever, and they go and check us out, they're going to come across a web app with 2 discontinued products and one with a warning on it saying that like basically we're waiting for the next thing. And that could be someone's one and only impression. They go on it, they're like, this is weird. This doesn't look legit. And that's like, then we just lose that impression forever. So I do agree with you. I think like it's very easy, and you don't need some like great analytical mind to drum up engagement on Twitter. And we should not entirely do everything the professional way, because that's not really how DeFi works. I think we all know that. But that engagement, like, it should convert to someone who actually sees us and likes what we're doing on a more serious level, wouldn't you say? And this is kind of like what we talk about a lot with bottlenecks. It's like, okay, so we could just refresh the app, like completely change the app, and get some more marketing materials ready, but then like other things aren't ready, so like they're kind of waiting on the protocol stuff to finish up. And then it's like, okay, well, we can refresh some stuff and wait for other stuff, but then people will be like, I don't get it, has it launched? And the way we're kind of decided to solve this is that we would punt on a lot of stuff that could have been done in the interim. So we could have made improvements to the app this whole time. But by just doing the whole thing and launching it together, it has more impact as a whole. And then after that, when everything is in sync, and all out there, like the protocol's running well, the front end assets have changed, then we can think about like any engagement is a win, because we're like, we do want people to put eyes on all of this stuff. But right now, I just don't think it really matters. And if anything, it might be bad to kind of blow our engagement load before the stuff is ready.
Yeah, I can only like give my anecdotal experience here. It's not really just like a one and done impression for me. Like if I come across a project and they're saying, okay, we're gonna launch soon, here's our product, but we're not currently ready yet, I will still like keep that in the back of my mind, and then when I hear a name again, I'll recognize that project, and I might go check it out when it's actually launched. So it's like about planting the seed of what KeeperDAO is, what we're trying to do, and giving like a rough time of when we're gonna launch. Because crypto and DeFi especially, it's just like a constant barrage of new projects and new launches and just new primitives. And you have to like bombard people with longer dated exposure. Like you can't expect them to just look at it for once and instantly convert. It's like planting that seed early. We don't actually have to like get them to use our current product. Just get into their minds of what KeeperDAO is and what we're trying to accomplish, and like give them a rough estimation of when we're gonna launch. Because then the next time they're gonna hear it, they're gonna be more receptive to actually checking a product out. Because I think we're gonna have if they actually know what KeeperDAO is, and they hear that name again when we're actually launched, I think we're gonna have a way higher conversion rate that way than if it's just the first time they're hearing about it. At least that's like my personal anecdotal experience.
What we are, I mean, I think that's really valuable, and I do agree. I think multiple, like the way conversions happen is exposure over time. For most people, that's certainly like how my brain works as well. And I think it's like common in marketing to do things in that way. But like, I think you're kind of getting at a point here, is that like what we are has changed, and our like public assets do not reflect that yet. So like we have a lot of very like MEV focused language, maybe a lot more technical. We still have the white paper up, which has changed like the nature of the coordination game has changed a little bit from like some of those early resources. So it's not so simple like now to get into people's heads what we are, and that's actually one of the things that like Dean the marketer is doing. He's going around and asking a lot of questions to a lot of people, and coming up with language which more succinctly like gets to the point of what we are. Because like for a lot of you guys, you may be quite like sophisticated and like used to DeFi. You've been here for a while. You know like the language, but there's a lot more people who are just diving in for the first time. And KeeperDAO is, as Hazard often says, we're kind of in the like deep end of the pool. Like there's quite a lot of preliminary knowledge you need to even understand what it is we do. And that's a really difficult thing to sell people on. Like there's only a small fraction of people who might be interested who we can kind of give an elevated pitch to right now about what we are. And that's one of the key problems that marketing is trying to solve. And that is actually quite a difficult problem.
I could just
just a quick point.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you're giving the people in crypto way too much credit. They bought Cardano or ADA for like 3 years without a product, no TVL, nothing, just telling them it's a better Ethereum. We can go out tomorrow and tell the people we are the better cow swap, and they will buy our tokens without even thinking twice about it.
But those are not really the people we want to target. Like, no offense, but if somebody is new to crypto and just has like some basic understanding, I don't think they're going to be driving very much volume through the coordination game. At least my impression was with the coordination game, we're going to be targeting large swaps that would benefit from on-chain and centralized exchange execution and would have like non-extractable value issues like backrunning, and that almost exclusively happens with large orders. So like at least that was my impression, that the like targeted user for the coordination game wouldn't be the more DeFi veteran, not like the newcomer that has absolutely zero idea what any of this means.
Right, but you also need the newcomers to drive the engagement. So like this is exactly the problem.
I think I disagree with that, honestly.
Like,
I think the engagement is driven by actually like the DeFi veterans. At least I can only speak anecdotally. The people I follow are mostly like the DeFi veterans, and those are the people that actually then drive where engagement goes. If you can somehow convince them to take a look at KeeperDAO, that will then drive the engagement towards those newcomers.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that's fair, but you know, like you're also using your own anecdotal evidence, which is important. But like you've already found us, right? We kind of like done a good job on you, and now we need to like do the same job on a lot of other people who have a different set of information. They come in with different ideas, and then we have to kind of simplify and unify those messages so that they're not contradictory or confusing. And I think like you touched on another really important thing here, which is that like users who drive volume, and this could be like, what is that? Because that could be a trader, it could be a whale using our product, but it could also be a integration partner like B Protocol who are like integrating directly into our product through an engineering like pipeline. And these two people are very different to market to. They're looking for different language. That is a different channel of communication. And then we also have in the mix people who are interested in holding the Rook token. They're investing in the tech. And those people may incidentally use our product because it's pretty universal. It's a swap, and we also do staking. But they're going to have different queues. So as like Ape Season said, a lot of those people, like they don't want to hear the details. They just want to hear that we are better than another thing they've heard about. But an integration partner who could be driving millions a week in volume, they will want to know the details. And so working out like how we get these messages to each people most effectively is kind of the job of the marketer. And that stuff is hard. It's harder than you might think.
Yes, but is the whole point to just get TVL, get volume, and basically do everything through the protocol itself? Or do we just want people to buy the coin, the price goes up, and then they start looking at us because price go up is the best marketing in all of crypto, and then they will come and bring the volume? Like it's one side or the other. It doesn't have to be just get professionals, get a lot of volume from them, and fuck retail. It can also go just the other way around.
Well, the way that the coordination game flywheel is designed, though, is that if more volume flows through the protocol, the price of Rook should go up. Right?
Dean is here. Dean, what do you think about this discussion about marketing?
Yeah, sorry guys, just checking. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great. Yeah, I was just listening. Pango doing a great job. I've only just dropped in the last few minutes, so I was hearing different sides to it. But to say what Pango was saying, I understand primary concern is to see the appreciation of Rook price. We all want that. But usually that comes when you do a job very well, because the price can rally and it can decline, and you don't have the fundamental things in place like institutional deal flow, the right partners, the bolts that are required to make sure that, apologies for the example, but if we want the stock price to go up, then there needs to be fundamental business practices in place. You can make the stock price go up through volatile marketing moves, but usually there's no velocity behind it and it crashes, goes back down. We don't want that because it's actually detrimental. So what we're doing now is articulating the technology that allows us to have those fundamentals in place and to achieve that land grab and to acquire that respectable volume from strategic partners, which as a consequence will make price go up eventually, and in tandem conducting marketing activities that are price sensitive in the sense of front of mind awareness and, you know, crypto Twitter and the things that are important, aligning to also what communities say, because you're an invaluable source of information, and there is a time and place where we really want to tap into that and get your thoughts, because you know your stakeholders, you're with us on this journey, so it's very important. Right now, what we're trying to do, because everyone's saying the same thing, best price, optimal execution, MEV protected. If we follow that without doing our homework and we say what they say, they may just put us in the bucket of, so your flash spots, but you give back some money, or your cow swap, but we want to be greater than that. We don't want to just be status quo plus one, and that's what we're working on right now. The different personas, the different needs that they have, the different messaging that we need to cater to them, different fears, different jobs to be done, and then making bespoke messaging and marketing material that achieves that. And they say, okay, they're not like this, they are like this. This is cutting edge technology. They are leading the way. They are creating new categories. Some things that we're doing will create a new category. If we create that category and we own it, and of course all the intellectual property behind it, then that would definitely have velocity behind the Rook price.
Yeah, thanks for that point. Like, it's just like my general favorite quote is price improves fundamentals, which I think is especially true in a very reflexive kind of area like crypto, because everything, at least in my opinion, crypto is a completely attention-driven market. So, wait 1 second. So you basically all protocols just do is compete for attention. So while price improving fundamentals might at first sound a kind of like just a funny meme, I think it's actually kind of true, because what is the best driver of attention? It's price. So if you actually, the biggest issue most DeFi protocols have is adoption of the underlying protocols. Like I've invested in plenty of different projects over time that I've tried to like bring out structured products for stable farms so that you don't have like a varying APR. It's like it sounds like a good idea, but the issue is that they never actually got attention, so they never took off. So the biggest issue most DeFi protocols face is actual adoption of the protocol. And the easiest way to achieve that is a price pump, whether it be temporary or sustainable. I believe, like, yes, it makes sense that we should try, obviously, aim to make that sustainable. But I think, like, just trying to do everything again, just at the optimal time, it's just not really how the space works, at least in my opinion.
I think.
But again, I'm not a marketing expert or anything. I'd actually rather stay out of this. But like, just the inaction, at least by previous over the previous terms, has like kind of forced me to look at that a little bit more closely.
No, but Priest, what you're describing is the B2C market. Like, we're B2B, mostly a B2B, let's say DeFi infrastructure play. And we have been getting these integrations without good price action. So I'm not sure if I agree with your statement, actually.
Oh no, I think it's both, actually. Like I've mentioned that before. If you currently look at even just new builders, like what protocols do they know of? What if they like, how do they get ideas for what to build? They look at what currently exists in the marketplace, like at Aave, Synthetics. Like we have a ribbon for like option protocols. We have vaults. We have Curve. We can do like just income yields on top of that. I don't know. Like they look at what's currently available in the market and what they know, and then they decide what to build on top of it. So if KeeperDAO is just unknown in general to the market, we're not gonna be able to get even new integrations because they're not gonna be able to know about us to build off that. So I think just generally everything, even B2B or B2 whatever, is all still under the same fundamental like concept.
Yes, I love what you're saying. Your strength is my weakness, so don't worry about that. I'm a former trader, but learning more and more about, and I trade in crypto, but the DAO and what we're doing here is new to me, so don't worry at all. 100% agree with you. Price is the greatest motivation of attention. The greatest thing that robs confidence and institutions where the biggest volume is when price rallies fast and declines fast as well. And this is what we don't want, because as we've also experienced, which has been driven by community as well, there might be some negative sentiment about, well, it rallied and it was great, but it's come down. So what are we going to do to go back to the glory days? Then you have to look at, well, what was systemic that made those glory days happen? Is it scalable? Can we replicate that again? And so some of the answers to those questions are, they are B2C answers, and some are B2B answers as well. So we're just trying to put them in separate baskets and align the marketing material to appease each audience because they have different needs. But you're 100% correct. If price is moving, attention is on you. So our B2C marketing will be different to our B2B, whereas B2C would be more attention, louder. Our B2B would be different.
That's great to hear. I also know that you're relatively new to KeeperDAO, so sorry for barraging you with that. Well, you haven't really had much time to settle in, but I'm definitely looking forward to what KeeperDAO is going to bring out in anticipation of the coordination game.
No, thank you. You're a gentleman. I appreciate it. I am, yes, new to KeeperDAO, hopefully not so much cryptos and trading or marketing, but it's very symbiotic. We can learn so much from you, feedback loops, and it helps a lot, because we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the community, your support, your patience as well. So that's really valued, and we want to tap into that. So please keep talking to us.
Cheers.
Well, thanks, Dean, for hopping up and sharing your thoughts on that. Do we have any kind of last bits of feedback? I know that this has been really good, strong, engaging conversation, and I just want to make sure that I've given everybody a chance to share their thoughts before we close out today.
Something I just think would be cool to help Dean out, since he's kind of newer here, and I think just for any marketing person coming in with, we definitely have a good crowd kind of in this conversation. I would love if people just kind of threw, it doesn't have to be long, but just briefly, like how they found KeeperDAO originally. Like that may be very helpful to Dean. Like for instance, I know I was looking at Token Terminal, just looking at different metrics, and that's kind of how I found it. So maybe if people kind of throw in the chat, maybe that'll help Dean if you guys want.
Yeah, that's immensely helpful. What are the touch points? How did you find out about us? Was it 1 exposure, 2, 10? Anything you can share with us, because that's essentially the map to the destination, the route you took, destination to get to KeeperDAO. Really appreciate that intel. Thank you for sharing.
Matt, awesome thing to bring up there. All right, well, let's go on ahead and close this one down for today. I'll have this recording up on YouTube later as well, and we'll look forward to Town Hall. Taylor, you got anything else?
Nothing on my end. Cheers, everyone. Great turnout.
All righty. Well, hey, have a good rest of your Wednesday, everybody, and we'll talk again soon.